I'm going to try to call this to order. Okay, team, can I call the meeting to order, please? Where am I? Just trying to get my gear. Councillor Stewart is, I got a couple of minutes that he's not going to be here for just a couple of minutes. So we'll get started with Councillor Stewart. Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to May 1st, May Day, 2023, council meeting for the City of St. John. And tonight we're going to start with a land acknowledgement, as we do. And tonight it's my opportunity to bring the land acknowledgement to you. The land on which the City of St. John, or Menaquest, is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and the Pescatawakari, have signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. Let us pause for a few minutes and reflect. I'll now ask everyone to stand for the national anthem. Okay, City Clerk, next item.
Thank you, Your Worship. First item on the agenda is 2.1, approval of minutes of April the 17th.
I need a motion to approve the minutes of April 17th. Deputy and Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is the approval of the agenda. There are two additions from Committee of the Whole. The first one would be 17.1. This is for an indemnification to the province for train whistle cessation, and 17.2 civic recognition awards.
Thank you. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Norton and Councillor Hickey on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is disclosures of conflict of interest, if there are any.
Conflict of interest. Not seeing any. Move on to next item, please.
Next is the consent agenda.
Deputy, over to you for the consent agenda.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move 5.1 through to 5.7.
Thank you. I'll take a seconder on that. Councillor Norton on the question. I have, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Members' comments, 2-minute round, no politics. Away you go. Who's up first? Councillor Hickey, over to you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. With the start of the month, there's a lot of new things going on. So May is Jewish Heritage Month. I'd like to recognize that and certainly recognize the members of the Jewish community in our city, and of course the important work done at the St. John Jewish Museum as well, and the work that they do. I'd also like to recognize that May 5th is Red Dress Day, an important day to recognize both our work in truth and reconciliation, but specifically the missing and murdered Indigenous women in Canada. And I also like to give applause and nod to the work that our team is doing, certainly led by our General Counsel's office, but the work that they're doing in offering truth and reconciliation, but in also making sure that this council remains as in touch and as effective as we can from that perspective. Also very important, King Charles's coronation is coming up this week, and I wanted to mention that there are books to offer greetings to sign at both the Union Club and then as well it'll be at Trinity Church on Sundays from 10 a.m. to noon. The city even has their own delegation unofficial delegation going to the coronation with our very own Jennifer Walshoots headed over to check things out and enjoy the festivities in London. So all the best to her in her travels, and of course I'll end with long live the King.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Radwan?
Thank you, Mayor. So today, as you all know, is National Physicians Day, and I was there for the flag raising. So if you're driving by, you can see the flag raised. Tomorrow, we're getting an update from the crew that was Discover St. John, now Envision, at 8 o'clock for their AGM at the Delta. And there's actually a newcomer summit as well tomorrow at the cruise ship terminal between 1 and 4. And the airport is having their AGM actually on the 10th, so that's coming up as well. Some exciting things happening in Uptown St. John. It's Burger Week, actually, from May the 1st till the 7th, and there's always creative burgers to be able to indulge in, and so I hope to get out a few times this week to get some burgers at our Uptown restaurants. Reservations are always recommended because it's usually a busy time. I wanted to say many thanks to the crew of the company that looked after, and our own staff that looked after the cleanups of the encampments that have done so far. They've done a really, really good job, and the city's looking great. And I was seeing lots of local 18 staff out cleaning up the streets, and so things are looking great. Unfortunately, I do have to end on a sad note. I wanted to just pay my respects to the Bailman family. Bernice Bailman was somebody who was wonderful to deal with as a restaurateur, going into Bailman's to get your fresh produce at the St. John City Market. She's quite young, in her 50s, and so my deepest sympathies to Robert and her entire family.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ogden. Councillor Stewart, was your light on? Okay, thank you. Councillor Ogden, over to you.
Are you sure, Councillor Stewart? Okay.
I just want to thank Jennifer Walshoots too. I noticed that she's organizing some things with the Loyalist celebration. The Loyalists were the first refugees to come to Canada. Approximately 100,000 of them were pushed out of New York. Some hung, some the land taken away. You won't find that in American history books. But the single largest group came into St. John, and I'm not sure exactly the number, somewhere around 15,000. Our burial grounds are full of the children from that time period because they died over the winters, and they were a multicultural group. And so I hope that we once recognized them a lot more. Now that we have many refugees and immigrants, that's a great thing. But that was the first immigration groups to come to Canada, and the single largest group came to St. John, and we've always been a welcoming community, I think partly due to that and partly due to the way the Wolastoqey people treated them very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norton?
Thank you, Your Worship. Also extend my deepest condolences to the Bailmans family as well. Belinda was a teacher at Princess Elizabeth School, and her daughter serves as an EA over at Beaconsfield, and she's touched a lot of lives, both young and her colleagues as well. Obviously, her influence at the city market as well. Many folks know her, and I know one of the first people to reach out with that loss at that workplace at Prince Elizabeth School was you, Your Worship. So thank you for that. I do want to give a quick shout out to the folks I work with, the 85 faculty and staff have raised close to $2,000 for the Bailmans family to help out during this time, and it's certainly it's a huge loss in our community, and certainly on our faculty and staff. So it's a loss for St. John as well. There's good news out there as I lead off with, obviously that otherwise sad piece of news. But I do want to thank the efforts of city staff and the partners in terms of cleaning up some of the encampment sites around our city. Beautification about 10 or 15 years ago by a group that later on transitioned into groups like Uptown St. John, and some of those leaders always said that keeping a clean city was priority number one, and it goes to show that we haven't lost that emphasis. So thank you, CAO, to you and your team that are coordinating the efforts of that, whether it's on private property or whether it's on municipal property or provincial property, to get those encampment sites set up, and where those are available on our city website. And I know some of the folks around this table have shared that. And with that, if you're looking to get some of your own neighborhood or your backyard cleaned up, whether it's a neighborhood park or whether it's a rec center or a place, the Green Machine's available, ready and waiting, and we'll even provide the gloves. You provide the manpower, we'll get the equipment to you. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor. Deputy?
Thank you, Worship. I just want to have a shout out to Prude St. John for hosting Lunch and Learn on homelessness, mental health, addiction services. Julie Dingwall from Avenue B was there to answer questions and describe, a much larger problem than most of us realize that we have. And so it was a very big eye-opener for a lot of people in the room. The room was packed, by the way, and I think we need to do more of that education so that people have an idea, what causes homelessness. And, people are people, and some people have bigger problems than others. So I was glad the mayor and I had the opportunity to go, and I want to thank Prude for hosting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. I don't see any more lights. I'll piggyback a bit on that the deputy's speaking about this harm reduction seminar, and it was wonderful because there was a woman there, Emily, who told her son's story and her son's journey, and her journey with her son, and how the evolution of her own ideas about drugs, people who take drugs. She saw how her son was treated out west in cities, and she recognized that how difficult it is for people who have an opioid addiction to resolve that and to then work their way back into society. So it was very interesting, and Julie Dingwall was there to support her and through the talk. So it was great. It was very, very worthwhile. I will also send my condolences as well to the Bailman family. I knew Belinda very well, and to Rob and her daughter Virginia, and Benton, her son. I mean, that is a huge, huge loss for the community. They were supposed to be at the Queen Square Market in a couple of weeks, so it's scary, and I guess it's why I often will say that I know I only have so many Friday nights left, and none of us really know, but it was at 55, it was quite a shock. I was in Ottawa last week, I guess it was, probably just a week and a half ago, and I met with a few ministers. I wanted to go up to meet Minister Hussein about the 4 projects that we have through the Rapid Housing Initiative Fund. I went up with the city CAO, Brent McGovern, and we met that Minister Hussein. We met Dominic LeBlanc's, his executive and senior advisor, Tory, And so because we have a couple of projects in with them, we met with Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor, who's a COA, who's also, we have projects in with them and have been good to us over time. And we also met with Minister Omar Alghabra, who's been very good with bringing money to the Port of St. John. So I had a very, I would say, successful trip up to Ottawa. Fast, but successful, so it was good. And today was National Physicians Day, and I will just say that living with a physician, it's you need to say thank you to your physicians because they're there to look after you in your worst of times. And if you really need a lot of care, if you've been to the regional hospital and you've been very sick, you get the best of care there. But it is a 24 hours, 7-day-a-week job for most physicians. Keeps you busy. I know when Ed was working at his full tilt with obstetrics, he was probably putting in about 100 hours a week and sleeping about 1.5 nights a week at the hospital. So it was a busy time. And I found a little note from one of the girls that said, "Dear Tooth Fairy, I know my mom's not the Tooth Fairy because she doesn't print like you do. And I know my dad's not the Tooth Fairy because he's never home." And I thought to myself, that's sad, but that's the life. But that's what you signed up for, I guess. Anyways. All right, that's it for me. Next item, City Clerk. Oh, sorry, did I have someone else on there? Was there another light on? No. Oh, Councillor Killen, sorry.
Yes, sorry, I just remember a quick story for members' comments that I meant to bring up. So obviously it was very windy today, so big props to St. John Energy for getting us back online really quickly. My son texted me from Burn Hill at lunchtime saying, "Power's out, Mom." Like, okay, great. And my next comment from him back was, "Oh, it's back on." I said, "Oh, it must suck really. Our energy utility is so good." And he said, "Yeah, it does." Barf face. So the kids didn't get to leave school, but awesome for St. John Energy for making it so as parents we didn't have to rush in and grab our kids at lunchtime today. So despite to their chagrin, but anyhow, I thought that was cute.
I like the way he's lobbying for that.
Oh yeah.
Next item, City Clerk.
Thank you. So next we have two proclamations. The first one is 7.1 on your agenda, and this is for Lyme Disease Awareness Month.
Whereas Lyme disease is one of the fastest growing vector-borne illnesses in the world, and whereas the population of ticks, the primary vector for this transmission of Lyme disease in New Brunswick and other parts of Canada, is growing and expanding in New Brunswick, and whereas the number of New Brunswickers suffering from Lyme disease is increasing from one year to the next, and whereas awareness plays a key role in making this disease known to the public, as well as the steps to take to prevent contracting the disease, now therefore I, Mayor Donna Node-Reardon of St. John, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2023 as Lyme Disease Awareness Month in the city of St. John. Next item.
Next is 7.2, and this is another proclamation. This one's for Melanoma and Skin Cancer Awareness Month.
Whereas it's imperative that communities across Canada be reminded of the importance of sun safety. And whereas overexposure to UV radiation is one of the major causes of melanoma and non-melanoma skin cancers. And whereas skin cancer is the most common of all cancers, 1 in 6 Canadians born in the 90s will get skin cancer in their lifetime. And whereas many people seek sun without taking the advisable precautionary measures and are unaware that any darkening of the skin, including a tan, is indicative of UV damage, and whereas skin self-examinations should be performed on a monthly basis, as skin cancers are highly treatable when detected early, and whereas Save Your Skin Foundation is dedicated to the fight against non-melanoma skin cancers, melanoma, and ocular melanoma through nationwide education, advocacy, and awareness initiatives. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Donna Node-Reardon of St. John, do hereby declare the month of May 23 also as Melanoma and Skin Cancer Awareness Month in the city of St. John. Okay, City Clerk, next item.
We're just a few minutes before our advertised public hearing at 6:30, so we could move ahead on the agenda to deal with one of the quicker items. Item 10.1, I would suggest, is third reading for a bylaw respecting procedures of council.
10.1, over to you, General Counsel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council. At your meeting held February 21st, this council resolved to approve the notice of motion process outlined in the staff report, including the notice of motion template and the best practices for members of council to draft and submit a motion, and directed our office to prepare the necessary amendment to the procedural bylaw to give effect to the proposed revised notice of motion. Before you for third reading this evening is an amendment to the procedural bylaw that follows best practices for the drafting and submitting of a notice of motion and reflects the process approved by this council at its February 21st meeting. Council provided first and second reading to this amendment on April 17th, 2023. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Your Worship, and the City Clerk for the appropriate motion.
Thank you. City Clerk, over to you for the two motions.
So two motions in this case. The first motion is approval of third reading by summary. The second motion is approval of third reading by title.
Approval of third reading by summary. Deputy. Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Radwan opposed. Motion carried. Next item.
And this is
next
entitled
up.
bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting the procedures of the Common Council of the City of St. John. The summary is that this amendment to the procedural bylaw gives effect to approve a notice of motion process. The revised process is a two-step process where the notice of motion is placed on the agenda of council and read into the record. The debate and voting on that motion takes place at a subsequent council meeting. This allows time for council members to consider the motion during the two-week period before being asked to vote on a motion. The amendment also incorporates a notice of motion template that directs councillors in the drafting of a motion and is intended to ensure that members receiving the information necessary to make an informed decision. And now one more motion to approve third reading by title.
Approve third reading by title. Councillor Stewart and Councillor Lowe on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Radwan opposed. Motion carried.
A law to amend a bylaw respecting the procedures of the Common Council of the City of St. John.
Next item, City Clerk.
We only have 1 minute left, so I would suggest we move on to item 15.1 under general correspondence. It's a letter request to present by the New Brunswick International Student Program. Recommendation is to refer to clerk to schedule.
Recommendation refer to the clerk to schedule. Presentation on the deputy and Councillor Norton on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Okay, and so now I'm showing 6:30 for the public hearing. So we have two items under a public hearing. The first one is item 9.1, and this is for a proposed Section 59 amendment with a Planning Advisory Committee report and staff recommendation for property at 55 McDonald Street.
Mr. Dobbelstein, over to you for the intro.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Before you this evening is a public hearing for an application for an amendment to the existing Section 59 conditions governing the use of the St. John Transit Facility at 55 McDonald Street. This application has been evaluated by staff and the Planning Advisory Committee, and included in your agenda package is a recommendation to approve an amendment to the Section 59 conditions. This amendment will provide for the site to be used for the maintenance of other city fleet vehicles in addition to the city's existing transit fleet. A revised scope of permitted uses is also proposed. And I'll turn things over to our senior planner, Mark Reed, for the staff presentation.
Thank you, David. Your Worship and members of council, as David mentioned, this is a Section 59 amendment for the existing St. John Transit Facility at 55 McDonald Street. The applicant has requested an amendment to the Section 59 conditions, which would allow for maintenance, repair, and storage of City of St. John fleet vehicles other than our transit fleet at the facility. This will allow for our fleet services operations to be relocated from Rossay Avenue to the transit facility to take advantage of some efficiencies in space and scale. This is an air photo here of the site. The site was constructed in 2008, 2009. It's largely developed with the existing building. No expansion to the building is proposed. The actual activities that would be added to the site, there will be some offices added here in the circle towards the circular front part of the building, and then more towards the rear of the building, there would be an internal area converted for additional vehicle maintenance. Again, additional drawings. The existing site is located at the intersection of Loch Lomond and McDonald Street. The surrounding neighborhood, it's really a general mix. We have a former shopping center, Loch Lomond Plaza, at the other side of McDonald Street. There's some existing single unit to multiple unit residential in the area, as well as some institutional uses with the Loch Lomond Villa and a school. The lands to the south and east are industrial lands that are undeveloped. This is a photo of the existing site from McDonald Street. This is a photo of the site from Loch Lomond. There was extensive landscaping that was incorporated when the site was constructed, and it does meet the city's standards in the municipal plan and the vision of the municipal plan for the business center area. Internally, it's generally a large maintenance facility. There's areas there that do auto body work on various vehicles, as well as heavy repair and other light vehicle maintenance. This is a view here of the rear of the facility. There will be some minor changes to the garage door openings and an additional opening for some ventilation with respect to a dust collector. The site is within the business center designation of the municipal plan. The intent of this land use designation is for industrial and commercial vehicle-oriented uses that incorporate a high-quality building design and landscaping. This is met through the design of the facility that was conducted in 2008, and staff are of the opinion the proposal meets the direction and conforms to the intent of the municipal plan. The site is zoned utility service, which is a zone that the city has for a lot of their facilities. The site is limited to essentially a transit operations facility and a library currently. Basically, the impact of the additional repair functions is minor, although there would be some additional vehicles that would be serviced at the facility. The scale of the vehicles, not that much of a change. They're currently the largest vehicle they're accommodating is a bus, which is also comparable to some of the fire apparatus and larger construction vehicles that Public Works operates. So based on that, and given its location at a major intersection, staff are of the opinion that there would be limited impact from the additional activity at the site. The Section 59 amendment, what we're proposing is to expand the scope of permitted uses. Currently, a transit library and transit facility and library are permitted. Staff are recommending that the other uses be permitted in accordance with the underlying utility service zone, which also allows for a library, and that fleet vehicle maintenance and repair also be permitted. We also wanted to future-proof this amendment. This is the second time now that we had to amend the Section 59 conditions. The first was back in 2015 to accommodate the library relocation. So what we're looking at when we did this is we said, let's just future-proof this and allow for a wider range of uses that may be operated by the city out of this facility in the future should our needs change. So that covers off anything from additional business office uses if we had to locate, maybe a customer service counter over there or some additional planning staff. If we had a small-scale community center, community policing office, emergency services facility, recreation facility, as well as potentially, a daycare center. In terms of engagement, we submitted information on the proposal to landowners within 100 meters of the site on April 5th. The proponent, St. John Transit and Fleet Services, also communicated in writing to proponents within 100 meters of the site, and we did advertise tonight's public hearing on the website. There were no appearances at the PAC meeting other than the applicant. And staff and the committee's recommendation are aligned to amend the Section 59 conditions to permit the additional range of uses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reid. We'll hold questions until after I do until I open the public and close the public hearing. All right, so I'm going to now open the public hearing, and I'm going to ask if there is anyone here or online who would like to speak against the application. there anyone here or online who would like to speak against this application for 55 McDonald Street? Is there anyone here who would like to speak against the application? Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application? I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application here in the council chambers or online. And I'll ask for a third time if there's anyone who would like to speak in favor of the application. So I am, Mr. Councilor, Commissioner Hugenholtz, you're going to speak in favor of the application?
Yes, just in terms of the operations that are going to be working out of this building, we're in full support of the recommendation before you.
Okay. So I'm going to close the public hearing since I've called 3 times for both. So the public hearing is now closed, and I'll go to questions. So if any of my team has questions for staff, and Councillor Lowe, your light is on, go for it.
No, what I was going to do is move it because this building was built for 80 buses and it's got 40 in it. So we're taking things from Boar's Head to Rossi Avenue to here. So it's totally productive in what it is. So I'm moving the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll take a seconder on that, the deputy. So just quickly for the public, the recommendations are in the kit. We've got the few items here. Is it a municipal plan amendment? No, it's not. Is it a zoning bylaw amendment? No, it's not. Is it a rescission of previous Section 39 and 59 conditions? No, it's not. It's a Section 59 condition. That's all we're doing tonight. So on the question, the recommendation is in your kit. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much. So now I'll need to motion. So that's 9-1. Approve the sections. Oh, there's just the one motion for this one. Okay, next item, City Clerk.
Next is the second item in our public hearings. It's 9.2 on the agenda, and it's a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for housekeeping amendments. It does have a PAC recommendation and a staff presentation.
Mr. Dobbelstein, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening's second public hearing is for a relatively simple and straightforward text amendment to our zoning bylaw. It's related to updating the definitions of supportive housing and supportive facility to better address changing needs within the housing continuum. The amendment also incorporates a streamlined approach to approving the use of shipping containers as an accessory use in certain zones across the city. And among other things, this amendment will remove process barriers to supportive housing. For instance, you may recall Rose House, which is operated by Coverdale, had to go through a planning approval process that would no longer be a requirement if you approve this amendment. And the preparation for these types of text amendments, which for the most part are arising from our Affordable Housing Action Plan, are not that resource intensive for staff. However, they do ultimately improve operational capacity for the city, as the planning approval processes for PAC, as staff particularly who sit or who present there, as well as council members who sit on PAC would know. And these amendments also give new authority to the development officer to grant approvals and variances at a staff level and allow for applications to be dealt with much more smoothly and swiftly, which benefits our applicants, staff, PAC, and ultimately council. The amendments have been evaluated by staff and the Planning Advisory Committee, and they are included in your package along with a recommendation for approval. And I'm pleased to turn things over to Jennifer Kirshner, our Manager of Community Planning, for the staff presentation.
Thank you, David. Your Worship, members of council, before you is another set of text amendments which staff have prepared. If you recall, late last year, we undertook a round of housekeeping amendments which largely focused on topics related to our Affordable Housing Action Plan, as well as other issues that have arisen and have been identified by staff for a chance to kind of relook at our zoning bylaw and find ways to streamline and address emerging planning issues. Tonight, we have two purposes, one of which is to facilitate a streamlined approach to approving the use of shipping containers as an accessory use in certain zones across the city. This is something that staff have noticed an increase of applications. Currently, those are required to go to the Planning Advisory Committee for approval. So this would mean even a heavy industrial site where you would expect to find a shipping container by nature, they would have to seek specific approval through the Planning Advisory Committee. The second is to update the supportive housing and supportive facility uses in order to really address our changing needs within the housing continuum. Staff have been monitoring these two definitions since shortly after I got here to see what the pain points were with the definitions and whether or not they were still aligning with the types of housing we see being provided, not only in more of a medical facility type situation like a nursing care facility, but also what's being provided by our nonprofit housing providers that provide housing with more of a wraparound service component. So the first component here is creation of a definition for shipping container. So this really just formalizes what a shipping container is. And it includes a set of amendments that will create some standards associated with how shipping containers can be used, in which staff or development officer is able to grant approval. So this includes allowing them to be used for special events. So if there's some sort of festival going on and they need to place a shipping container on site for a set period of time, that will be one of the uses now allowed in and amongst things like large balloons. It's very diverse. And then as well, identifying different zones where shipping containers could be used as accessory uses. So this is predominantly the more industrial style zones, as well as a couple of the more rural zones as well. The intent with this is they would be accessory to the primary use. So you wouldn't be able to go in and say, I need to put 45 shipping containers on a site because I want to. It has to be accessory to the main use on the property. So maybe it's an agricultural use, maybe it's a heavy industrial use where they need to have some for storage purposes. The idea here is it's accessory to whatever the primary use is. I will indicate that staff have been looking at shipping containers. There's obviously a lot of discussions around how they can be used, whether it's converting them for commercial purposes, for residential purposes. For now, we decided to start with this, which was the biggest pain point, and we'd be doing further research into how those can properly be used within our bylaw. Currently, if someone wanted to build a house, for instance, out of a shipping container, they would be required to go to our Planning Advisory Committee, and more importantly, they would be required to meet our building code standards, which could be very challenging given the knowledge we have on shipping containers. So it does provide that extra step for those people who are trying to be really innovative with use of them to make sure that they're meeting our minimum standards requirements as well as building code and meeting a certain aesthetic with those as well. So we will be considering these in the future, and if we determine there is a path forward that would work for our different zones, we could be considering future zoning bylaw amendments to address other types of uses of shipping containers. The main portion of tonight's set of text amendments is really addressing our supportive housing and supportive facility definitions. So currently we have two definitions. Supportive housing is for small-scaled licensed facilities, and supportive facility is for the larger scale licensed facilities. So with supportive facility, you'd think of things like Shanx, really large scale nursing facilities that maybe have independent living components. They're typically located in our higher density areas, commercial areas, and larger community service areas as well, whereas supportive housing is more located in a variety of residential zones. The key conflicts we're finding is that these types of definitions are very strictly for licensed facilities, and supportive housing has a certain unit cap, and supportive facility doesn't really have a unit cap at all. Staff did a pretty deep dive into provincial legislation and was reflective of the types of applications we've had from our community nonprofits. And we're finding that the intent of having two definitions, while wonderful, doesn't quite address the types of housing projects we see coming forward from our nonprofit communities, which are often non-licensed and more geared towards providing wraparound services. So these are things that help people transition from possibly a non-permanent housing position to it more of a transitional housing with the ultimate goal of something more permanent. So what is being proposed is taking those two definitions and basically creating three definitions. Supportive housing will address those non-licensed facilities that provide the wraparound servicing component. And it'll allow up to a maximum of 12 residential units, so it can either be geared towards families or individuals. And this would be permitted in the zones that currently allow the supportive housing use. And then the supporting facility zone or definition, we're splitting into two. One would be supportive facility minor, which is for the smaller scale facilities. We took these numbers based on provincial licensing, so they have different standards based on age, but approximately supportive facility minor is for a maximum of 10 residents depending on age, and it would be a provincially licensed facility. And then supportive facility major, which would be for more than 10 residents, would be the larger scale provincial licensed facilities. So this would be things like our larger scale nursing home facilities, as well as retirement residences, which currently fall under that but are not provincially licensed, but they are of a scale that they need to be addressed in more specific sites. So basically, all of this is probably very frighteningly laid out in the zoning bylaw amendments of 49. But essentially what it is doing is splitting two definitions into three. Supportive housing and supportive facility minor will be allowed within the zones that supportive housing is currently allowed, and then supportive facility major will be allowed where supporting facility is currently allowed. So essentially, as always, when we recommend things, they do align with our zoning bylaw, and through this would require the necessary permits to be applied for when anyone is underdoing one of these projects. We also took a look at supportive housing and facilities to make sure that they continue into in line with the intent of Plan SJ, which is really to create more diverse housing options in our city, and the Affordable Housing Action Plan, which very specifically talks about undertaking zoning bylaw amendments to support affordable housing and different types of housing creation. And this is one of the final major identified areas within our zoning bylaw that needed to be looked at and addressed as part of the Affordable Housing Action Plan. Will continue to be reflective and to identify areas that need to be looked at. But this was kind of the last of the major amendments that we were anticipating to really hit some of those key points for housing provision. We did advertise on the city's website, and PAC was in alignment with staff recommendation, as this is just a housekeeping text amendment and is not tied to a specific property. No letters were sent to any adjacent landowners.
Perfect. Thank you, Jennifer. Good job on that. So I will open the public hearing, and I will ask if there's anyone here or online who would like to speak against this application. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application. And for the third time, if there's anyone here or online who would like to speak against this application. I will now ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. I'll ask if there is anyone, again, who would like to speak in favor of the application. I'll ask for the third and final time if there's anyone here or virtually who would like to speak in favor of the application. I will now close the public hearing, and I will ask my team if you have any questions for the presenter. I have a question from Councillor Hickey. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Not a question as much as a comment, Jennifer. Certainly thank you for making this as clear as possible for us. I would suggest that I get excited when I see things like this. I think it regains their focus on continuous improvement and the need and the impact and value of those types of operational efficiencies. And I would just say, as our staff, especially in your department, is stretched more and more thin, when it comes to the widening scope of our role here. I think this really says, affordable housing matters. These efficiencies matter. This is well within our scope to be able to take on some things to make it easier for folks to build housing in this community. And at the same time, we're going to continue to stand up to government for more affordable housing in this community, knowing that our team is ready to get it done. So that's great. Thank
Counselor, are you prepared to move the motion then, and we'll
I
get
will.
that on the
I'll
floor? Get it on the floor. Can I get a seconder on it? Counselor Harris? Okay, I'll go over to you next, actually, Counselor Harris.
Thank you. Similar to Councilor Hickey's point, I guess I would just say, this, one of the things not brought up in this, the advantages it gives us from a circular economy perspective, we've got a ton of shipping containers coming right through our port. And although from a building perspective, I would find this a nightmarish scenario to try to retrofit a shipping container into a house. Do not recommend it, but at the end of the day, if we have idle assets, if we have these idle assets sitting and they're going to go to be useful to no one, then this is the stuff we have to look at. So I'm almost wondering, like a bit of a prod would be, if we see this happen, these are things that we can put out in communication. If we get a lot of people doing different things to utilize these things, they help us from a climate action perspective. They utilize idle assets, and they're right here in town, and we're branded with it with the Area 506 Container Village. So I think there's a lot here to it. I like it. And yeah, even though from a traditional building perspective, I can't get behind it, I am curious to see what creative people are going to do out there with it. It is, so it's great, fully supportive. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Norton, over to you.
Your Worship, I was just going to say, I think that this is, a progressive move in our bylaw. I think that adding more contemporary pieces to our suite of availabilities for builders. I'm not a contractor, but it was interesting once I saw this, just doing a quick search just out of pure entertainment, that this has been a practice elsewhere in Canada, moving from the West Coast to this side. One of the articles that I found going back to 2015 was the cost per square foot was cheaper than a traditional build, but at the same time, Councillor Harris has much more experience with that than I do in retrofitting that. What does that look like? And you mentioned very aptly making sure that it's complementary to its surrounding area from an aesthetic point of view is a consideration that we have to have. But it just shows that our bylaw is maturing, along with some of the contemporary practices, that whether they're moving from the West Coast to the East Coast, or we have an availability of these types of things right here at our port. I think it's a good news story. So good on you. And as you continue to find out more, we'll adapt accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Redwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Kirchner. I just wanted to, well, first of all, I think that it's great that staff are really thinking outside the box. And I know, from speaking with you, you've had a lot of inquiries. I was just really curious. And I mean, I don't know, I'm just kind of asking you to kind of guess, like what, you've had a lot of inquiries. So what are the majority of inquiries of people wanting to do with shipping containers, if you don't mind sharing? I'm just curious.
Oftentimes, storage tends to be one of the main items. We occasionally get someone suggesting shipping containers as a solution to the housing challenge, but it isn't anyone who's saying, I would like to convert a shipping container into a house. What do I do? So it's more closely aligned to the traditional use that you'd find with a shipping container. But we have seen in other jurisdictions, I've read stories of a hotel that was made out of them. But we have heard kind of that maybe the cost isn't as great as it used to be, comparing the conversion of a shipping container versus a traditional construction project. So we haven't seen maybe some of the projects that would have emerged 5-10 years ago, but at least this does create at least a formal process where someone can look at it. We do encourage people, if they are interested in adapting a shipping container, they can reach out to us and we can have those discussions with them. But the building code component will be, from what I've gathered, one of the more challenging components. As soon as you start cutting holes into an existing structure, it changes the structural integrity. So you would have some challenges of getting some sort of a structural engineer or an architect sign off on it and be able to verify that those changes haven't impacted the quality of the building or the unit.
That's great. It's just a great way to recycle. So wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like that's it, and I have Counselor Hickey and Counselor Harris approving first reading by title.
Thank you, Your Worship. This one's entitled "A Law to Amend the Zoning Bylaw of the City of St. John."
Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. All right.
And a second reading is required on this one by title.
I need a motion to approve a second reading by title. Counselor Harris and Counselor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, next item, City Clerk.
Next is under consideration of bylaws, and it's item 10.2 on your agenda. And this is for a bylaw respecting the closing of roads, streets, or highways, Fieldstone Drive.
General Counsel, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before you for third reading this evening is an amendment to the street closing bylaw that purports to close a 231 square meter portion of Fieldstone Drive. At its meeting held March 20th of this year, Council considered a report from staff advising that Simcoe Development Ltd. Requested a reconfiguration of the street layout of its proposed subdivision. Originally, a cul-de-sac was contemplated to intersect with that street, and it was later determined that that layout was not feasible. Instead, the developer proposed to create a residential lot that would incorporate the portion of Fieldstone Drive that is proposed to be closed. The public hearing for the closing of that portion of the street was held April 17th last. Council gave first and second reading to the bylaw amendment immediately following the closing of the public hearing. And with that, I will hand it back to you, Your Worship, and the clerk for the appropriate motion.
Thank you. Okay, City Clerk, over to you for the motions required.
Your Worship, so for this one, just two motions, third reading in entirety and third reading by title.
So I need a motion to approve third reading by entirety. Counselor Lowe and on the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion opposed. Counselor Harris? Counselor Harris opposed?
Okay, and this is entitled Bylaw number LG 4-1, a bylaw respecting the closing of roads, streets, or highways in the City of St. John.
Okay, I need a motion to approve third reading by.
I have to read it in the
sorry.
entirety in this case. My apologies. So a bylaw of the City of St. John entitled a bylaw respecting the closing of roads, streets, or highways in the City of St. John enacted on the 11th day of March 2019 is hereby amended by adding thereto Section 8 immediately after Section 7 thereof as follows. 8. The City of St. John does hereby stop up and close permanently the following street. Fieldstone Drive, all that portion of Fieldstone Drive, a public street in the City of St. John in the County of St. John in the Province of New Brunswick, comprising 231 square meters as shown on plan of survey titled Showing Portion of Fieldstone Drive, City of St. John County, New Brunswick, prepared by Hughes Survey and Consultants, Inc., and dated March 28th, 2023.
Okay, so I'll get a motion on the floor to approve third reading by title, and then I will come to you, Counselor Harris, Counselor Radwan, and Counselor Hickey. On the question, Counselor Harris, over to you.
Your Worship, I'm just making a mistake here. I was asleep at the wheel. I was looking at 10.1 when I voted no, to no, not 10.2, for the first section of this reading. So my mistake. You can switch my vote back to a yes for 10.2 in the first section, then that's where I'm at. Sorry about that. Thank you.
All right, so are we good with that, City Clerk?
So there was no nay on 10.2 by
There was no
Council.
nay on 10.2, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
And so I
um,
have approval, I have a motion to approve third reading by title on the floor right now. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Excellent.
And
Next
this
item,
is
City Clerk.
titled
sorry.
Bylaw Respecting the Closing of Roads, Streets, or Highways in the City of St. John.
I'm not trying to rush you, City Clerk, but I feel like I am.
That's okay, Your Worship. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is under 12.1, and this is from the Chief Administrative Officer, an update on select catalytic projects in advocacy.
City CAO, over to you.
Good morning, good evening, Your Worship, members of council. For the catalytic projects update, I'll provide a brief update on each of the 4 infrastructure projects and touch on a couple of the advocacy projects. So as it relates to the innovative Central Peninsula Learning Commons, the working committees that the province established for the Central Peninsula Learning Commons and North End School remain active and are continuing to meet to move these critically important projects forward with the intent to still start construction in 2024 and have the schools open in 2026. On Funday Key, with respect to the market slip area, work continues, and the developer continues with design work on the new building for the Funday Key site. And as it relates to our new comprehensive recreational facility, work on that facility is continuing through 2023, and the consulting support that we have assisting with the design concept is helping us as we move towards seeking funding this important project for our community. So the funding component from both provincial and federal government will be essential to move this forward. And in terms of the investment in industrial parks, so the value chain analysis is complete for the industrial parks, and St. John really has clear competitive advantages in terms of transportation, which we look forward to promoting and marketing as part of the new website, and that's something that is planned to be launched in the month of May. So a new industrial parks website will be coming. And the team is also working with key partners on collaborating around some key infrastructure projects. And we continue to advance and work towards the creation of the 10-year strategic plan. And that's a key action in the 2023 initiatives or teamwork plan. And as it relates to the advocacy projects, affordable housing, since Council's adoption of the Affordable Housing Action Plan, the team has been very active in advancing a number of initiatives, and the city did submit its applications to federal CMHC Rapid Housing Initiative grant program approximately 6 weeks ago. And as the mayor mentioned this evening, we both met with the federal housing minister a couple of weeks ago to discuss the application and are anxiously awaiting word on funding. So the coordinated approach led by the city with our partners in the nonprofit housing sector really leveraged resources and was beneficial. And I think that will deliver results that will help in addressing affordable housing crisis in St. John. So a total of 123 affordable housing units were submitted to that CMHC fee. And the recruitment of a new staff lead to facilitate the implementation of the Affordable Housing Action Plan in coordination with other levels of government is actually closing this week. So we look forward to filling that position and having more staff resources to move forward the initiatives under affordable housing. And just over a month ago, the Housing Accelerator Fund was launched, a new federal program, and the team has been active in preparing for the opening of that application process. The team is becoming familiar with the program, attending webinars, and preparing for the opportunities that will come up when it opens in June. And so close coordination with the province is also underway on the housing file and continues. And with that, Mayor, that concludes my verbal update. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for the CAO? If not, I would take a motion to receive for information. Councillor Norton and Councillor Ogden on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 13.1. It's from the Finance Committee. It's an internal audit document.
Thank you. I'm going to pass this over to CFO Fudge for an intro.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Actually, this evening, Councillor Paula Radwan is going to introduce this matter on behalf of the Finance Committee.
Oh, excellent. Councillor Radwan, over to you for the introduction.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. So on July 22nd, 21, this council and the City of St. John approved internal audit services with also an internal audit charter. The internal audit service helps the City of St. John accomplish its objectives by bringing a disciplined approach to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of governance, risk management, and control processes. The charter itself outlines the expectation that each year the internal audit service provides you with its plan. So the Finance Committee received the 2023 internal audit plan and is recommending to Council for approval. With the plan, as the remainder of the 2023 year is a focus on creating a formal structure around enterprise risk management that will provide a deliberate and focused approach on effectively managing the organizational risk within the organization of the city, which will in turn assist the city in meeting its goals as set out in our key plans, such as like our 10-year strategic plan, for example. Risk management is a key focus at the city, as we know. It can provide great opportunities when effectively managing risk and can avoid any costs as well associated with taking unplanned risk. And I just like to send a special thank you to our Chair Sullivan, Councillor Norton, Councillor Hickey, and of course yourself, Mayor, from the Finance Committee for putting this forward. This is a very, very important project, and it served us well already. Special thanks to CFO Fudge and Director Forgy and all of the staff that have worked on this.
Thank you, Councillor. Count the CFO, is that the whole presentation? Okay, excellent. It's all in the kit. As Councillor Radwan said, there are 5 of us sitting on that committee. We've torn it apart. We've looked at it. It's a great initiative. So I will, Councillor Radwan, I will get you to move that then. And Councillor Hickey will second it. So on the question, on our recommendation that Council approve the attached internal audit plan for 2023, on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you so much. Next item, City Clerk.
Next, we have 2 items that came from Committee of the Whole closed. And the first item is entitled Indemnification to Province for Train Whistle Cessation. And I have a motion here that I can read into the record. And the motion would be that the city indemnify the province of New Brunswick in the form as presented to Committee of the Whole at its May 1st, 2023 meeting, and the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute the document ancillary thereto.
The deputy is going to move that for us. And Councillor Lowe on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
And next is item 17.2, and this is with respect to the Civic Recognition Awards, and the resolution would read, resolve that the list of award recipients for Citizen of the Year and Council Accommodation as recommended by the Committee of the Whole at its meeting of May 1st, 2023 be approved.
Okay, I'll take a recommendation. The deputy, Councillor Lowe on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. All right, that's it, I believe. Before I go to a motion to adjourn, I just want to say that tonight we also had on the public hearings, McDonald Street, and we did thank our team for finance. You also have 3 councillors. You have Councillor Stewart, Councillor Lowe, and Councillor Harris on transit that are working on your behalf as well. So that was a great item tonight. I want to thank staff. There's a lot of work in the kit tonight as well. There's a lot of items, always the items, and I like the housekeeping ones because they do the deep dive into so many little things that make life easier for everyone. So I want to thank staff for all their hard work as well. Appreciate it. And I'm trying to wrap you up early tonight here, so I'm not going to talk any longer. So I'm going to take a motion to adjourn from Councillor Lowe and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks so much. See you in 2 weeks.